Bills 2nd and 7 at the Texans 40. Shotgun snap. Taylor waits, dancing in the pocket, fires a strike down the middle, got a man wide open, and it is caught by Clay at the 10, at the 5. Touchdown! Touchdown! Charles Clay was wide open. Touchdown Buffalo, a 40-yard strike from Tyrod Taylor, and the Bills take the lead with 1:53 to play.
Event honors Van Miller, a Dunkirk, N.Y. resident, and who attended all of these until he passed away. What was your first connection with him?
Well, I mean, my first connection without knowing him was as a fan, you know, as a, hi, we're using your ladies' room, was as, I mean, listen to games and watch them on Channel 4 in Buffalo, but I listened to Bills games throughout my childhood, you know. I mean, we're talking about mid-'60s. I'm 7 or 8 or 9 years old. I listened to Van Miller do Buffalo Bills football. And then I went to work at WBEN radio in about 1980. Long time ago, and Van was obviously on the other side of the building in the TV side, so we got to know each other a little bit then, and Van was obviously doing Bills games on the radio. They put me on the Bills broadcast as a pregame, halftime host for a while, and that's where I got to know Van a little bit better. And then in 1984, his partner at that time, Stan Barron, passed away, and right in the middle of the season, they needed someone to throw into the breach, and I was the next man standing and got thrown in with Van on the broadcast and stayed, you know, working alongside him for 16 years.
Some mock games before you got going, or
me and Van?
Yeah.
No, we didn't have time. Stan Barron passed away. They needed somebody right away, and they threw me in there. And no, there was no practice, no time for practice. I was fortunate in that I had listened to Van, as I said, since I was a young guy, and kind of knew what he was doing and knew how he liked to work. So maybe I had that in the back of my mind. But I mean, we just worked it out, and it was all Van. It was all him making me feel welcome and making me feel comfortable. Van and I typically would talk a lot about the game prior to it, road games on the way, you know, sitting on the charter next to each other and talk about pronunciations, the thing you just mentioned, and kind of work all that out and what some of the themes of that game might be. Yeah, he's extremely witty. He was extremely bright, very energetic and enthusiastic. But yeah, I mean, he would shock me sometimes with how funny he was most of the time. And how natural he was at it. He was a natural play-by-play guy. He knew how to capture the moment and do it almost effortlessly. You know, that he was very, very good.
It's bedlam. It is pandemonium. It is fandemonium. It is fantastic. And the Bills have won it. The Bills have won it. Incredible. What a comeback by the Bills.
We had a game where it was one of the rare times when the Bills beat the Patriots, and it was at Ralph Wilson Stadium. And late in the game, and the Bills, I think, were trailing, and there was a tip pass and an interception went to Sam Adams, who was a 340-pound defensive lineman, and he ran it back in for a touchdown, an interception for a touchdown. And you can't rehearse this, but Van all of a sudden started yelling out, you know, he calls the play, and then he goes, "Am I dreaming? Am I dreaming?" And I thought, because I had the same thought. I'm sure 73,000 people in the stands had the same thought. Like, what is this? What is Sam Adams doing scoring a touchdown against the mighty Patriots? But that's how good he was. You know, he would capture the moment and sort of capture what everybody else was feeling as they saw the game. Absolutely. We're tied into the game. We want them to win. We want them to win a lot, and you feel it because, I mean, pro football, the nature of pro football is you only play once a week, and whatever happens on Sunday sticks with you until the next game. And so you know after a loss it's going to be a difficult week in many respects. And when the loss is painful or a bitter loss, it's even more so. And there were plenty of those, yeah. You know, I mean, to cite one example, the Bills lost a playoff game in Cleveland in the 1989 season, and Ronnie Harmon dropped a pass in the end zone that would have been the go-ahead touchdown. And in the short flight, Cleveland to Buffalo, 45 minutes in the air, I mean, both of us were like distraught, almost speechless, you know. I mean, I'm not going to tell you tears were flowing, but, you know, you just kind of sit there like, wow, you know. And yeah, there was a lot of that, more of that than I wish, you know, more of that than I care to remember. I admired a lot of broadcasters, including Ted Darling, who was a longtime voice of the Buffalo Sabres. And Ted actually moved to my hometown, Lockport, when I was probably 13, 14, 15. So that would have been, you know, early 70s. And I had an acquaintance who knew Ted and took me over to Ted's house and unannounced and said, "This is John Murphy, he wants to be a broadcaster." And Ted brought us in on a beautiful summer evening, and we sat and talked for 2 hours. I mean, who does that, you know? But Ted Darling did that. He was amazing. So I always admired Ted Darling and thought he was a first-class broadcaster. And with the advent of satellite radio, I can listen to Vin Scully do Dodger baseball a couple times a week, you know, late at night. And that's in his last year now. I mean, it's like watching you know, Picasso's last few paintings. He's unbelievable. I was a big fan of Ernie Harwell. He did Tiger baseball in Detroit for years, and you used to be able to pick him up on WJR radio here in Western New York. So, I mean, these are some of the all-time greats. Those are, you know, I mean, you don't ever think I'll be good as that guy, but you think, wow, that's really what it's supposed to sound like when you hear those guys work.
How do you keep your sense of humor? I mean, there's so much information that comes at a John Murphy, any other sports professional, let alone the amateur, just to sort through the stuff which is relevant for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, after doing it for several years, you know what you have to do. I spend a lot of time nowadays watching video of Bills opponents. I mean, and it's so easy now. You know, they on my iPad with the advent of NFL.com and All 22 for $100 a year, I can watch every NFL game ever, you know, played. And so when the Bills are playing the New York Jets, I can, on my iPad, watch the Jets' last 4 or 5 games, pick whatever games I want. So that's a lot of the preparation for me. You know, I read a lot about the opponents and the Bills. I work right there at One Bills Drive, which helps me, you know, keep in touch with what's going on in the building and what players are thinking, what coaches are thinking. But, you know, as far as the sense of humor, and this is one big thing I learned from Van. I mean, it's important, and the games matter, and people really care about wins and losses, but it is just a sport, and it is entertainment. And Van was great at kind of conveying that, I think. You know, it's not life and death. It's not even close to life and death. It's important, and it's important to fans, but it is not life and death.
Well, I think that came across in the Scott Norwood wide right, and ultimately whenever the emotions kind of drained, he said, let's keep in mind that it is a game.
Yeah, it is, yeah. I just saw Scott Norwood a couple of days ago, and we talked a little bit about those kind of issues, and it's good to see that he has perspective, and I think most fans have a perspective on it. Game again against the Patriots, and a victory over the Patriots where a cornerback named Drayton Florence intercepted another tip pass, ran it in for a touchdown, and that's I didn't see that coming, and I listened to that call and think that was a pretty good call. And I mean, the key is, and this is a Van thing that I picked up from Van, is to live in the moment. You know, like you can't script that out. You can't write down this is what I'm going to say if they happen to pick off Tom Brady. You really can't do that. You want to live in the moment and react to it as it happens. So, and let it happen organically. You know, and those are the kind of calls that I like the most.
Came up with a couple of words: fandemonium.
It is fandemonium.
Fasten your seatbelts.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's playoff time.
Again, the Van Miller tournament, and if you had to eulogize Van Miller, what would you say?
Well, I mean, he was a dear friend of mine, for starters, and a wonderful man who, as you can see by the turnout at this tournament, had many friends here in Dunkirk in northern Chautauqua County, and never forgot his roots and knew where he came from. And I think Van had a great sense of self, you know, knowing where he came from, knowing what he did well. I think Van knew what he meant to people in terms of his energy and enthusiasm and his humor, and he was very generous with that, extremely generous with, you know, sharing that with everybody.
At Ralph Wilson Stadium, the home of the Buffalo Bills, the spot where Miller never quite left. His name added to the Wall of Fame in October of 2014.
Second and goal at the 13. Dropping back, he drops the ball, picks it up, rolls to the right, still on his feet. Now throws, it's good to Lofton. He runs in for the score. James Lofton, what a play.
The Bills are in the Super Bowl
For the first time in their history. It took 25 years to get there, and they did it in championship style.
And he was an amazing professional. I mean, just as fine as broadcaster as you could find. And I don't know if that's a eulogy, but those are the things I can think of right now.
Well, you picked that up and you continue it today. So thank you, John. I appreciate you coming down.
My pleasure.